My 24-year-old husband has a friend who comes over frequently and will often spend the night because he can't afford frequent Ubers. And my husband does not feel comfortable driving after drinking, and I'm currently too pregnant to drive as I have short legs and the wheel sticks into my belly uncomfortably. This friend honestly never came over much before, but my husband got a job working 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off at a mining camp, so I don't get much time with him, hence prioritizing time with me, his pregnant wife, over nights out with friends. I didn't mind at first when he would come over, but it started to get uncomfortable quickly. After his first 3-4 visits, if I did not have a meal started or ready by the time he arrived, he would walk into my kitchen and start preparing a meal with our food. Of course, he would make enough for all of us, but I've genuinely never experienced that with a friend before, and it weirded me out. My husband doesn't have a problem with it though, so I said nothing to that. This morphed into him bringing stuff to make meals, which I did appreciate, but was still uncomfortable because if I offered to help or cook, he would tell me to go relax, as if I were the guest in my own home. What really irked me is last night he stayed over again, and my husband and I had slept in, although I had gone to the washroom a couple of times because of pregnancy. His friend, I guess, got bored and walked into our room without even knocking, asking if we wanted eggs. We both turned him down, so again he just goes into the kitchen and helps himself to our food. I find it extremely weird and really don't like that he didn't knock. I've never acted like that at any of my friends' homes and have never been treated like that before. Of course, I would be fine having someone help themselves to any drinks or snacks, but going and making a full meal, and just for yourself, since neither my husband nor I were hungry at the time, really weirded me out. I spoke to my husband about all of this and how I don't appreciate being treated as a guest in my own home, almost as if I'm a bad host, and especially not having my privacy intruded on. My husband agrees for the most part, but also says his friend is just doing this stuff to be nice and he doesn't want to create conflict. I told him he needs to set some boundaries because I will not be made to feel uncomfortable in my own home. This upset my husband a bit, and he is accusing me of not liking his friend and saying his buddy will think I hate him. Am I the idiot for asking for some boundaries? ETA. The friend doesn't drive due to medical conditions, and it is my husband that doesn't drive after drinking, smoking. This friend also doesn't do dishes. Not that I mind, but it is annoying not to clean up if he's only cooking for himself. If it's for everyone, I can pitch in that way, but I shouldn't have to clean up after him for his snacks/meals when he helps himself, will cook with ingredients I intended for other recipes, and has more than a few times helped himself to expensive items that he doesn't replace. Once cooked up a roast I was intending to make when the in-laws visit, finished off the rest of something that we wanted to use for other meals, etc. I also am of the point of view that in a family home you never enter a couple's bedroom. Regardless of knocking, you wait for the person to come out to you. That is my private space, and in my eyes nobody else is welcome in that space, but maybe that's just a me thing, barring injury or emergency situations. And I am pregnant, not incapacitated. I don't view it as help to come cook my food, even if you bring a couple of your own ingredients postpartum. I still don't want people in my kitchen. Bring a pre-made/frozen meal if you want, but don't go using my pots and pans. My husband still goes out for daytime activities with his friends, but the friend in question is his best friend, who will often stay 4 and some 5 nights out of the 14 my husband is home for. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1, not the idiot. You need to establish what you consider acceptable and simply state that to your husband as what you want. For example, he may think it's nice, but I would like to have meal times on our schedule, not his. And I would appreciate it if you could make it clear to him that if he wants to prepare something, he needs to clear it ahead of time. I am guessing from your narrative that you probably are a bit meek on the telling him what you want side, but a friend like this requires a firmer tone of voice and choice of language. I would like this, and I am going to be unhappy if that, so would you please do whatever. Comment 2. No idiots here. The buddy is trying to be helpful, cooking for you both while you're pregnant, taking care of his own needs when he's been invited to stay over, etc. He obviously has no idea it bothers you. Talk to your husband about what precise boundaries you want. Not coming into your bedroom is a good start. Limiting the days he comes so you get more time alone with your husband also sounds like a good one, and so on. Then he needs to tell his friend and present it as from both of you, not a request from you alone. Now for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for reading my previous post. I wanted to give you all an update on what's been happening over the past few days. So after I talked to my husband about setting some boundaries with his friend, things got a bit tense between us. My husband was still convinced that his friend was just trying to be nice and helpful, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being uncomfortable in my own home. The next day, my husband's friend came over again, and this time, he brought a bunch of groceries with him. He said he wanted to cook a big meal for all of us, and despite my reservations, I decided to give him a chance. As he started cooking, I tried to make conversation with him, hoping to understand his perspective better. It turns out that he grew up in a family where everyone pitched in and helped out, and he saw cooking and cleaning as a way to show his appreciation for our hospitality. I could see where he was coming from, but I still felt like he was overstepping his boundaries. Later that evening, as we were all sitting down to eat, my husband's friend made a comment about how he wished he had a family like ours. It caught me off guard, and I realized that maybe there was more to his behavior than just trying to be helpful. After dinner, I pulled my husband aside and shared my thoughts with him. We agreed that we needed to have a heart-to-heart with his friend and try to understand where he was coming from. The next day, we sat down with my husband's friend and had a long talk. He opened up about his childhood and how he had always felt like an outsider in his own family. He said that spending time with us made him feel like he belonged somewhere, and he wanted to do everything he could to show his appreciation. I could see the pain in his eyes as he talked about his past, and I started to feel more empathetic towards him. We explained to him that while we appreciated his efforts, we also needed to set some boundaries to make sure everyone felt comfortable. We talked about the importance of respecting each other's privacy and personal space, and how it was okay to ask for permission before doing something in someone else's home. He seemed to understand where we were coming from and apologized for any discomfort he may have caused. Over the next few days, things started to improve. My husband's friend was more mindful of our boundaries and started asking for permission before doing anything in our home. He also started bringing his own ingredients and cleaning up after himself, which I really appreciated. I could see that he was making an effort to be more considerate, and it made me feel more at ease. Looking back, I realized that my initial reaction to my husband's friend's behavior was based on my own assumptions and biases. I had assumed that he was just being rude and inconsiderate without taking the time to understand where he was coming from. It reminded me of a similar situation I had with my own family when I was younger. Growing up, my older sister had a habit of borrowing my clothes without asking. It used to drive me crazy, and I would often get into arguments with her about it. But one day I found out that she was borrowing my clothes because she was being bullied at school and didn't have the confidence to wear her own clothes. It made me realize that there was more to the situation than just my own feelings, and I needed to be more understanding and compassionate. In the end, I'm glad that we were able to have an open and honest conversation with my husband's friend. It helped us all to understand each other better and find a way to move forward that worked for everyone. I know that there will probably be more challenges and conflicts in the future, but I feel more equipped to handle them now that I've learned the importance of communication and empathy. Thanks for reading, everyone. I appreciate all of your support and advice. My ex-in-laws demanded my son for the summer after forcing me out of his life, but I fought back, and now they'll never see him again. A little backstory. I, 23-year-old female, had a forced marriage, technically arranged, but I felt like I couldn't say no at 18. I was very mentally ill, and my dad just wanted to get rid of me, essentially. I had my son before my 19th birthday, and due to my mental illness and how my in-laws treated me, I never bonded with him. They were a constant presence in my home with my ex-husband and barely let me have my own son. I had no support from anyone since I was in a new country. I filed for divorce a few months later, and my ex-husband won custody of my son because he was a man in his 20s with a stable job, and I was a mentally ill girl with no means to look after this child. After this, I moved back to my mother's country. She never approved of the marriage but was unable to help due to being abroad and other factors, and I wasn't allowed to call visit my son. On to the issue. A few months ago, I got a call from my father. I don't speak to him because of the marriage he forced me into, so I was surprised to hear from him. Turns out my ex was no longer able to care for our son. He married a woman who didn't want to be a stepmother, and they wanted to know if I could take him. I said yes, and a few weeks later, my little boy was in my home, and I had him enrolled in school. It took me a while to get his citizenship sorted, but it's finally been done. As it stands legally in my country, I have sole custody. In my son's country of birth, my ex has also registered with the necessary officials to let them know he has given up my son to me, and I have full custody over there too. It took us a few weeks to get used to each other, but he was already calling me mom and telling me he loved me very early on. I took time off work to get to know him better, and we are inseparable. It's nearing summer, and his grandparents, my ex-in-laws, have been asking me to send him to them for the summer. I refused for 3 reasons. 1, they were a big part of why I lost him in the first place. Imagine being newly postpartum, recovering from a horrifying birth experience, and not being allowed to hold your own baby and having no one to turn to. Everyone who cared about me was in my mother's country. 2, they might not let me have him back, and then I'll have to sue, and it will be very expensive and traumatic. 3, I asked him if he wanted to see them, and he said he wanted to stay with me. I passed this information on to them, and they're going mad. I'm being harassed on social media, and my family back in their country is blowing up my phone. My ex is also telling me that the only reason he gave my son to me instead of his parents was that he promised them they would still be allowed to see him. They've all been saying I'm a jerk for refusing to let them see my son, but I don't think I'm wrong given my reasons. I suggested they come visit us, and I would even let them stay in my home, but they have refused. Am I the idiot? Now for a few comments before the update. My ex is also telling me that the only reason he gave my son to me instead of his parents was because he promised them they would still be allowed to see him. A pity he didn't mention that when transferring custody. It's not a promise that you made, and you have no obligation to fulfill it, especially as your son has only recently arrived to live with you, and you're concerned that he may not be returned. Not the idiot. Even with nothing else, reason 3 trumps all. Not the idiot. The kid doesn't want to go, and there's no good reason why he has to. Even though he's still very young, there's no reason to force him for Granny's wish to be a mother again. If you wish, let them know he doesn't want to go. Wouldn't go down well, but might shut them up for a bit. Now for the update. Hey there, thanks for reading my update. It's been a week since I last shared my story, and a lot has happened since then. After refusing to send my son to his grandparents for the summer, the harassment on social media and the constant phone calls from my family back in their country only intensified. It got to the point where I had to change my phone number and make all my social media accounts private just to get some peace. One day while I was at work, I received a frantic call from my son's school. They told me that his grandparents had shown up and were trying to take him away. I rushed over there, my heart pounding in my chest, only to find my son crying and clinging to his teacher, refusing to go with them. It broke my heart to see him so distressed. I confronted my ex-in-laws and they started screaming at me, accusing me of being a terrible mother and saying that I had no right to keep their grandson from them. They even threatened to take legal action against me. I stood my ground though and told them that I had sole custody of my son and that they had no right to take him away from me. Later that day, I received a call from my ex-husband. He apologized for his parents' behavior and said that he had never intended for things to escalate like this. He revealed that the reason he had given our son to me was that he knew I was the best person to take care of him, and he didn't want his parents to have custody. He had only told them that they would still be allowed to see him to appease them, but he had never intended for them to have any real control over our son's life. This revelation changed everything for me. I realized that my ex-husband had actually been trying to protect our son in his own way, and that he trusted me to be a good mother. It made me see him in a different light and gave me a newfound respect for him. In the days that followed, I started thinking about my own childhood and how my father had forced me into a marriage I didn't want. I realized that I had been carrying a lot of anger and resentment towards him for years, and that it had affected the way I viewed relationships and parenting. I knew that I didn't want to be like him, and that I wanted to be a better parent to my son. I decided to reach out to a therapist to work through some of these issues, and it has been incredibly helpful. I've been learning how to set healthy boundaries, communicate effectively, and prioritize my own well-being. I know that I still have a long way to go, but I feel like I'm on the right path. As for my son, he has been doing really well. We've been spending a lot of quality time together, and I've been making an effort to be more present and attentive to his needs. He seems happier and more settled than ever before, and it warms my heart to see him thriving. I know that there will still be challenges ahead, but I feel more equipped to handle them now. I'm grateful for the support of my family and friends, and I know that I'm not alone in this journey. Thank you for reading my update and for all the kind words and encouragement you've sent my way. It means more than you know. My son starts acting out over my new baby and girlfriend. So I confront my ex-wife and we have a family showdown that ends with her admitting she was wrong. My ex-wife and I got divorced 2 years ago. We have a 15-year-old son who we share custody of. He spends 1 week with me and 1 with my ex. My girlfriend and her daughter moved in with me at the beginning of this year. My son and her have been getting along better than I could have hoped for, but lately he's been acting dismissive toward her and her daughter. Last week we found out that we're going to have a child together. We broke the news to the children today over dinner. Her daughter was excited to have a younger sibling, but my son didn't seem too happy. After dinner, I asked him if there was something bothering him. He asked if we were really going to have a child and how I could be sure that it's mine. I told him that there was no way to talk about someone, and he reacted by doubling down on his statement and calling her a homewrecker and a gold digger. He was getting pretty loud, so I told him to either calm down and talk to me in a normal tone or to go to his room to cool off. He decided to go back to his mom's house instead. I agreed to drive him because I didn't want him walking through half the city after dark. I told my girlfriend what happened, and she thinks I should text him before going to bed and let him take his time to respond without being pressured. I did receive a text from my ex, though, in which she called me a jerk, amongst other things, for kicking my son out in favor of my girlfriend, which is something I never did. I didn't want him to leave, but I also didn't want to force him to stay here when he insisted on leaving. I also think my ex might be behind my son's reaction since she can't stand my girlfriend. None of the accusations sounded like something my son would say, especially since my girlfriend is contributing to rent and groceries because she's an adult who can pay for herself. Edit. I think some people are projecting their own issues onto my post and are making a judgment based on that instead of what I actually wrote. My ex and I agreed to get a divorce because we'd grown apart and just weren't happy anymore. Neither of us cheated, and my son knows that. My girlfriend and I met 4 months after my ex, and I separated and started dating 2 months later. She didn't meet my son until we were both sure that our relationship was serious. Edit 2. My ex and I were only married for 9 years. I don't know why some people are claiming it's been 2 decades. I'm 39, and my girlfriend is 26. Her daughter is 7, and her father hasn't been in the picture since she was a baby. Because a lot of comments kept asking for a more detailed timeline. November 2018. My ex-wife and I separated. Spring 2019. My girlfriend and I officially started dating. September 2019. Divorce process started. Winter 2019. My son and my girlfriend met October 2021. Our divorce was finally made official. February 2024. My girlfriend and her daughter moved in with me now. For a few comments before the update. Comment 1. None of the accusations sounded like something my son would say, especially since my girlfriend is contributing to rent and groceries because she's an adult who can pay for herself. Well, your son did say them. You're the idiot, possibly. You got divorced when he was 13 and almost immediately got a new family and now are having a new kid. Think about how your current child might take that. Comment 2. The fact that your son and she got along and then he is distant says something. Also, the fact that he questions if the baby is yours. Something happened, and you're being rude and dismissive of him. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for all the comments and support on my last post. It's been a week since I last updated, and a lot has happened. After dropping my son off at his mom's house, I tried to give him some space to process everything. I sent him a text before bed, letting him know that I loved him and was there for him whenever he was ready to talk. The next day, I received a call from my ex-wife, and she was furious. She accused me of trying to replace our son with my girlfriend's daughter and the new baby. I tried to explain that wasn't the case, but she wouldn't listen. Later that week, my son came over for his scheduled visit. He seemed distant and barely spoke to me or my girlfriend. I tried to talk to him, but he just shrugged me off and spent most of his time in his room. It broke my heart to see him like that. As the days went by, I noticed my girlfriend becoming more and more anxious. She confided in me that she was worried about the stress affecting the baby. I reassured her that we would get through this together. But deep down, I was just as worried. One evening, while my girlfriend and her daughter were out, I found my son going through some old photo albums. He was looking at pictures of our family before the divorce. When he noticed me, he quickly closed the album and tried to leave. But I stopped him. I asked him what was going on, and he finally opened up. He told me that he felt like I was starting a new family and leaving him behind. He was afraid that I wouldn't have time for him anymore, especially with the new baby coming. I was shocked. I had no idea he felt that way. I sat him down and explained that no matter what, he would always be my son, and I would always love him. I told him that my girlfriend and her daughter were an addition to our family, not a replacement. We talked for hours, and I learned that my ex-wife had been filling his head with all sorts of ideas. She had told him that my girlfriend was only with me for my money and that she would leave me as soon as the baby was born. I was furious. I couldn't believe she would say those things to our son. The next day, I confronted my ex-wife. I told her that I wouldn't tolerate her poisoning our son's mind against me and my girlfriend. She denied everything at first, but eventually, she admitted that she had said those things. She claimed she was just trying to protect our son from getting hurt. I told her that I understood her concerns, but lying to our son was not the way to handle it. I suggested that we all sit down together and have an honest conversation. To my surprise, she agreed. The four of us met at a neutral location and we talked for hours. It wasn't easy, but we managed to clear the air. My ex-wife apologized for the things she had said, and my girlfriend apologized for any misunderstandings. We all agreed to put our differences aside for the sake of the children. Since then, things have been better. My son has been more open and accepting of my girlfriend and her daughter. He's even started to get excited about the new baby. My ex-wife and I have been communicating more effectively, and we're working together to co-parent our son. It hasn't been easy, but I'm hopeful for the future. I know there will be more challenges ahead, but I'm confident that we can face them together as a family. Thanks for reading, everyone. Your support means the world to me. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.